Huh? Still single at your age? Pathetic for an old maid like you. I met my ex-husband at a fancy Chinese restaurant. Despite his persistent sarcastic remarks, we exchanged words, and then my sister, who eloped with someone else, appeared. When my ex-husband announced he'd be marrying her soon, I laughed at him mockingly. Oh? Didn't I tell you? Feeling on top of the world, my ex-husband was caught off guard when I made a shocking confession. My name is Michelle Smith. I'm a 39-year-old housewife. I've been married to my husband, Mike, who works in the transportation business, for about 2 years. We met at work where I was previously an office clerk. I took a liking to Mike's lively and cheerful demeanor and made the first move on him. I found his easygoing and manly charisma very appealing. It was love at first sight. Upon hearing my feelings, he reciprocated, and we got married in a short span of 6 months. I thought he was a kind and pleasant person while we were dating. However, after our marriage, he turned into someone else entirely. It became routine for him to shower me with abusive words, and there were times when his actions made me feel like I wasn't even treated as a human being. I never imagined married life would be so tough and painful. Every day became gloomy, and I gradually started to fear Mike. He is a truck driver, but his job is specifically as a light truck delivery driver. I wish he'd been a long-haul driver so he would have been away from home more often, giving me some breathing space. As a light truck driver, his job entails delivering many loads to various places in a single day. So, he usually comes home in the evening. Early in our marriage, I had expressed my desire to work. I think I want to contribute to our finances. If both of us work, we can save more, and it'll be useful if we have kids. The moment I said that, Mike slammed his beer glass onto the table and started berating me. You saying my earnings aren't enough, huh? I never intended to imply that. Probably because he was drunk and overreacting, I found him terrifying. He seemed ready to hurl the glass at me at any moment, so I hurriedly tried to placate him. No. I just don't want to be a burden to you, that's all. You're probably looking down on me inside. Who do you think allows us to live this comfortably? Even if you work, you wouldn't earn much. Don't act all high and mighty. I realized after marrying him that Mike has extreme paranoia and wild mood swings. I never saw this side of him when we dated, so it was unexpected. Could I really spend the rest of my life with someone like this? The thought intensified my anxiety. But another incident fanned the flames of my worries. I'm truly happy Michelle married into our family. Mike rarely brought girlfriends home, so I was worried he'd never marry. This happened during a Thanksgiving's gathering at my in-laws' house. They are genuinely kind people who dote on me a lot. When we got married, they were over the moon, as if they had gained a daughter. I got along well with my mother-in-law. And my father-in-law was also very kind to me. One of the few consolations in my suffocating married life was dining out with my in-laws. However, in front of them, Mike began making a mockery of me. That turning point was during a family reunion. Must be nice, huh? Having a beauty like Michelle. Look at my wife. See that flabby belly of hers? A male relative began making fun of his wife, drawing laughter from the crowd. Beside him, his wife playfully pinched his belly and chimed in, giving a sort of husband-wife comedy routine, lifting the mood. Then, my husband turned the tables and decided to poke fun at me. What are you talking about, uncle? Michelle looks so childlike, hardly womanly. Your wife looks way more elegant and mature. I was left speechless by this unexpected comment and revelation. The male relative said, "Come on, cut it out." But everyone seemed to find it hilarious. The only ones who looked concerned were my in-laws. "Michelle, go to the kitchen. Help my wife with dinner preparations there." My father-in-law, seeing my distress, gave me these instructions as a way to escape the scene. Grateful, I rushed to the kitchen accompanied by my mother-in-law. Tears streamed down my face due to the overwhelming incident, but my mother-in-law comforted me as if she were my own mother. As for my father-in-law, he stepped in and chastised everyone, insisting they apologize to me. All did, except for my heavily intoxicated husband, who remained defiant.
Why should a husband apologize to his wife? That's why dad always gets ridiculed by mom. Can't you have some dignity?
And for some reason, this led to a father-son argument. The gathering ended early that day, and from then on, the relationship between my husband and his father deteriorated. My visits to my husband's family home became infrequent. Life after that was a living nightmare. I lost my only source of joy and began to feel weak and lost day by day. Even daily chores felt monumental, and whenever my husband remembered that day, he'd shout at me.
You must have said something unnecessary to them. Thanks to you, I was humiliated in front of everyone. What are you gonna do about it?
Fearing his temper, I became constantly on edge. Living on the 10th floor of an apartment building, I often thought if jumping would offer an escape from my misery. When we're mentally drained, making rational decisions becomes a challenge, and I felt exactly that way. It was then, during one of these despairing moments, my sister visited. You haven't been in touch recently. I got worried. Michelle, you look awful. My elder sister, Catherine, who's 3 years older, worked nights. In her previous job, she was the most sought after, probably because she looked much younger than her age. It was rare for her to drop by unannounced. Turns out, she was in the neighborhood checking on the renovations of her new club and decided to stop by. Something happened with your husband? My sister and I were the best of buddies growing up. When I got married, nobody was happier than my sister, Catherine. She cried tears of joy and celebrated with me like no other. I just want to disappear.
Whoa, what happened?
Seeing the distraught look on Catherine's face, tears welled up in my eyes as I conveyed the painful situation I was in. Every day, it felt like I was being emotionally abused by my husband. It felt like living in a prison, a life full of pain and despair. There were moments I thought of ending it all, overwhelmed by it all. Catherine, after hearing all of this, showed visible anger, saying she's gonna go yell at my husband right then and there. But just imagining what could happen to me if she did made me even more scared. Tears streaming down my face, I pleaded with her not to confront him. Seeing my reaction, Catherine regained her composure and started brainstorming what could be done. After a silence between us, something seemed to click in Catherine's mind. With a bright expression, she whispered a plan into my ear. Hearing her plan, I exclaimed in surprise and asked if she was out of her mind.
You think that'll actually work? Who do you think I am?
Catherine said, confidence oozing from her every pore. I trust Catherine to pull it off, but the risks if her plan was discovered made me anxious. Don't you want to get out of this and be free? Seeing me unable to make a decision, Catherine turned serious and told me it was ultimately up to my courage. Hearing that, I made up my mind and agreed to her plan. From that day on, Catherine came over nearly every day. People who are emotionally abusive tend to act all high and mighty in public. If I'm around, he won't be able to pull anything on you, Michelle, right? Saying this, she visited me frequently over the next few months until her new shop was ready. At first, my husband seemed unsure of Catherine's frequent visits, but he seemed to enjoy the drinks they shared every evening, gradually warming up to her. Catherine made sure Mike drank enough to get really drunk and stayed with him until he fell asleep.
You're always joining me for drinks, so feel free to stay the night anytime.
Mike, now quite fond of Catherine, began to show her affection he never showed me, even trying to stop her from leaving. But Catherine always declined his offer with a polite smile, assuring him she'd be back the next day. For Mike, time spent with Catherine seemed like a dream. He was so enchanted by her that he seemed to have forgotten all about me. But then, when Catherine's shop was about to have its grand reopening, an incident occurred. I'm divorcing you. Out of the blue, Mike declared he wanted a divorce. Naturally, I was shocked by his words and demanded an explanation. Why all of a sudden? I've found someone I care about more than you. I want to be happy with her. I want you to leave. I flat out refused to accept his selfish reasoning. I didn't accept my husband's decision to divorce. However, Mike seemed to have expected this and coldly mentioned hiring a lawyer. A meeting with a lawyer present took place a few days later. Even there, Mike hurled unbelievable accusations at me. "You just want money, right? Do you want the property? I'll give whatever you ask, so let's end this." In front of anyone, Mike made it clear he no longer had feelings for me. He seemed to want to end our marriage so badly that he didn't mind paying a hefty sum to make it happen. The lawyer, probably feeling uncomfortable, showed me the average amounts for such cases. "You really don't have much affection for me, do you? I could tell where your heart was. Easily figuring out who you're thinking of and who you wish to spend your life with." I lowered my head, realizing resisting was futile, and accepted the divorce terms. "Fine. But I demand the division of the property." He probably thinks he can just earn it back. Mike, oblivious and elated at the thought of a smooth divorce. Yet, watching him, I let out a mysterious smirk. And without him catching on, the divorce proceedings went underway. However, while I may have accepted, it was Mike's parents who firmly opposed it. Later, when we went to inform his parents, they shouted at Mike and spoke in my defense.
What on earth are you thinking? Exactly, Michelle has been so dedicated to this family, and you talk about divorce? And having someone else? You can't be serious.
His mother, teary-eyed, tried to convince Mike while his father, with a flushed face, was visibly angered and scolded him. But their words seemed to be just noise to him. Annoyed, he dismissively responded, "It doesn't matter if you accept it or not. She's already agreed to it."
It's because you pushed her into a corner with lawyers.
They must have really not wanted us to divorce. They've always cherished me like their own child, and the thought of separation was painful to them. I could feel their desperate pleas, and I felt guilty for betraying them. I love them too. I would have loved to live as their daughter. If only things didn't turn out this way with Mike. Regret was the only thing that filled my heart, and I couldn't hold back the tears.
People like you are so damn annoying. I'm done with her. I'm gonna marry someone I truly care for and be happy. Stop nagging me.
Mike, now completely enraged by his parents' words, started shouting back in defiance. Naturally, they couldn't accept his decision, and Mike was disowned right there and then. And so, Mike left his parents' home, apparently eloping with his love interest, and our divorce was finalized. Half a year passed. I was dining at an upscale Chinese restaurant, invited by someone, and enjoying a meal with my parents. "Isn't that Michelle?" The one who called out to me was none other than Mike. I had gone outside to make a call and bumped into him in the hallway. "Long time no see. Didn't think you were still around." His condescending tone hadn't changed. My face must have shown my disgust.
What's with that face? If you've got something to say, spit it out.
He wasn't shouting because we were in public, but he still looked down at me with cold eyes. I held back my anger and turned my face away.
Acting all high and mighty when you can't even stand up for yourself. Did you manage to find a boyfriend after our split?
Mocking my demeanor, Mike sneered at me. I knew this side of him only after our marriage, and I regret not realizing it sooner. "It doesn't concern you anymore." Without even confirming if I was in a relationship. Mike, with his usual sly grin, kept on taunting me.
Really? Still single? Pretty pathetic for an old hag.
Mike peered into my face with an expression that screamed he felt he'd won at life, even more so than before our split. I was about to give him a piece of my mind when... "Oh. Michelle, Mike. Didn't expect to see you two here." My sister Catherine walked into the store, calling out to both of us. "Catherine. Perfect timing. I was just about to share some news with Michelle here." The smug look on Mike's face was almost disgusting as he snaked an arm around Catherine, drawing her close. I just stood there, not letting his actions fluster me, my gaze icy cold as I watched the scene unfold.
"I thought I'd tell her first that we're gonna get married."
he bragged, pulling Catherine even closer. I had always suspected that his feelings for Catherine were the real reason he wanted a divorce. But looking at them now, with emotionless eyes, Mike, still not realizing the gravity of the situation, shot me a smug grin.
Sorry, I guess. I mean, I'm gonna be living the dream with her. But hey, you're not too bad looking. Maybe with a bit of effort?
I'm sorry, Mike. I can't marry you. Gently shaking off his arm, Catherine dropped the bombshell with a smile. His face was a picture of shock, unable to comprehend her statement. The truth is, I never had any feelings for you.
Wait, what? What are you saying? Didn't she tell you?
I couldn't resist, my voice dripping with mock confusion as I savored every moment of his confusion.
What do you mean didn't tell me? The whole thing, Mike, was a plot Catherine and I hatched to make sure we divorced.
And as I walked over to join my sister, we exchanged amused smiles.
Right?
Even witnessing this, Mike couldn't fathom what was going on. His words came out jumbled. Was this all just a play?
Thanks to Catherine here, I got quite the alimony from you. Really grateful for that.
Rejecting his initial proposal for divorce was all part of a plan to get as much property as possible from him.
It was all Catherine's idea. I was eager to divorce but didn't want to raise suspicion. That's why I played along. No way! Catherine would never say that.
Why not? Struggling to come to terms with the truth, Mike babbled on, refusing to believe my words. I tilted my head in confusion and asked, "Why do you say that?"
Why would Catherine say something like that? She said she's gonna marry me.
Well, if you took my sales pitch so seriously. I was just doing my job, entertaining a client. Catherine responded to Mike's comment, her brows furrowed in feigned concern. She touched her cheek with an exaggeratedly innocent gesture, sighing softly as she spoke. I only entertained you as a client. I never had any feelings for you. I'm sorry if I gave you the wrong impression.
So you've been fooling me this whole time? For the past 6 months?
You were such a valuable customer, Mike. Always trying to one-up everyone. It was kind of cute, actually. Mockingly, my sister spoke with a derisive laugh. The ex-husband, completely fooled by her theatrical performance, displayed his anger and raised his voice despite being inside a shop.
All those words about wanting to be with me, asking me to divorce Michelle, were all lies?
Who in their right mind would want to be with someone like you, an emotionally abusive husband?
What did you just say?
The sharp words of my sister infuriated my ex-husband, who began breathing heavily in agitation. While cautiously watching out for any signs the ex-husband might become physically aggressive, I observed their exchange and discreetly reached for my phone. It was hard keeping up the charade for half a year, but thankfully you're simple-minded. It wasn't like I could just stay married to you. In truth, my sister was already married when I was with my ex-husband. She has a husband who works as a bodyguard. To ensnare my ex-husband, my sister persuaded him by saying she was also going to get a divorce. From the perspective of my ex, who had never been popular in his life, the fact that someone was chasing after him so much was a delightful feeling. At the same time, he reveled in the superiority of being able to take someone away from another. Essentially, he fell right into my sister's trap.
So, about you taking time to get that divorce.
That was obviously a lie. As you can see, my marriage is perfectly fine. At that moment, a man emerged from behind, walking towards us with a smile. Pleasure to meet you. Seems like my wife has been causing you some trouble.
You can't be serious.
This is my husband. I invited him today to introduce him to you. My sister, with her radiant smile, made a point to show off by linking arms with my brother-in-law, exuding happiness. My ex-husband looked dumbfounded. His face a mix of anger and sadness.
It's a shame, isn't it? Wasting half a year only to end up being thrown out of your own home. It's so pitiful, I can't even bear to look.
As my ex-husband seemed dazed from the shock, he tried to lash out at me, reaching to grab my collar. But my brother-in-law swiftly intervened. handling him like he was a mere child.
What do you know about what I've gone through this past year, chasing after her? Do you understand? I don't, and I don't want to. You play with people's lives and then act all high and mighty. Do you understand how much pain you've caused me?
Facing my ex-husband's aggressive stance, my voice broke with anger and tears as I finally let out all the frustrations I'd bottled up.
The way you ridiculed me in front of our family. Your attitude towards your in-laws. All your actions during our marriage. I will never forgive you. You're going to get a taste of hell.
I then turned around and called out, "Please, come out." Emerging from the room behind me were not just my ex-husband's parents, but also my own parents and even my husband's relatives. Now everyone can see your true colors and just how pathetic you truly are. Ignoring my ex's questioning gaze, I played a voice recording I had received from my sister. It had him speaking to her in a disgustingly sweet manner. "Are you really going to break up with Michelle?"
Of course, I don't need someone useless who can only do house chores. I prefer someone mature and attractive like you, Catherine.
His sleazy voice was so palpable that it made my skin crawl. Even though it was nauseating to hear, I did not stop the playback. In front of the entire family, my ex-husband was being made an example of. "Don't you love Michelle?"
Of course not. She's nothing more than a maid to me. I only married her because she would be a notch in my belt, no emotional connection there.
Everyone was visibly repulsed by his comments. He started to create a scene, demanding the recording be turned off, but my burly brother-in-law wasn't having it. He restrained him effortlessly, ensuring he couldn't interfere.
She's so obedient. Just a little threat, and she'll do anything. She's more like a servant, someone I can throw away anytime. I have no attachments to her.
Having heard the evidence of the emotional abuse he directed at me, his in-laws were furious. Everyone present unanimously criticized him.
You're a disgrace to this family. How could you say such things about your dear wife?
You're pathetic, even for a man. I'm embarrassed to even call you family. As everyone looked at him with contempt, I spoke coldly. Nobody's on your side anymore. Stay away from her family. I never want to see your face again. Having masterfully executed this public reprimand, I stopped the voice recorder and asked my brother-in-law to throw him out. My ex tried to retaliate, but to no avail. He was forcibly ejected from the premises. After that, the store was locked up, but my husband made a scene out front demanding it be opened. Eventually, he was reported and taken to the police station. My sister and I, having exposed my husband's wrongdoings, gave each other a high five and shared our joy of having achieved our revenge. It felt like a celebration as we ordered food at the restaurant, and everyone showed sympathy for the hardships I had endured.
Reserving the whole place was the right call. Everyone could relax and enjoy without feeling restrained,
said my sister, Catherine, who had arranged it. I expressed my gratitude to Catherine, who had helped me through everything, and I savored a meal with her for the first time in a while. And so, I got my revenge on my ex-husband. After that, it seemed like he was almost stalking Catherine, got reported to the police again, and apparently, my brother-in-law, Mike, gave him a taste of his own medicine. After that, Mike was too scared to show his face around my brother-in-law. 13 years have passed since, and now I'm handling the accounting at Catherine's store. I'm still in touch with my ex-in-laws and occasionally dine with them. I'm deeply grateful to Catherine for helping me out of my shell. I'll repay this favor someday. With that thought, today, I'm gonna work hard alongside Catherine. I won't approve any paid leave for you. I couldn't believe my ears. You always challenge me. You don't need to come back. Having been told this, even I had reached my breaking point.
Are you really sure?
She must have been taken aback by my response. Her eyes widened in surprise.
Too bad.
My name is Nancy, and I turned 28 this year. I've been working at the Candu Corporation for 10 years, making me an experienced employee at a young age. While my family wasn't wealthy, my parents took great care of me. Being an only child, I rarely got new things. Most of my clothes were hand-me-downs from cousins or neighbors. It was rare to get new outfits. Still, I was quite content. Neighbors and relatives showered me with love, and I have fond memories of going on picnics in local parks with my parents during weekends. Perhaps it was out of sympathy, but I'm still close with my cousins and we keep in touch regularly. Growing up surrounded by love, when I was in 12th grade, I served as the student council president and had excellent grades. My class teacher suggested I pursue further studies. Despite being offered a scholarship to college based on my grades, I declined. I'm not interested in going to college. I want to work as a public servant. My parents tried to persuade me otherwise, but considering the costs of living alone, I went against their wishes and became a public servant. I just wanted to relieve my parents of any burden as soon as possible. But then, my father was diagnosed with a severe illness and passed away before I could repay his kindness. I decided to take care of my mother in place of my father, continuing to live with her. In the hustle and bustle of daily life, time flew as I experienced various facets of working life. By the time 5 years had passed, I'd become a respected figure in the office, leading a comfortable life. I've been given the responsibility of training newcomers and occasionally acting on behalf of my boss. Moreover, the bonuses were good, allowing me to give about $600 monthly to my parents. In my personal life, I enjoyed trips with friends, colleagues, and my boyfriend. One day, our manager was transferred and replaced by a new one. This new female manager was said to be the president's daughter. Rumor had it she had been loafing around, relying on her father's wealth. Unable to stand by and watch, the president decided to put her in a responsible position to teach her some life lessons. Only the president and I knew this. Just because she was the president's daughter, many in the company, who knew she was hired due to her background and had little real-world experience, didn't think highly of her. The work environment started getting tense, and the atmosphere was increasingly stifling. And to think the trouble would eventually come my way. It happened when I made her a cup of hot coffee upon her request.
What's this? Are you trying to annoy me?
I made it just as you told me. She glared at me and threw the hot coffee in my direction.
Ouch! What are you doing?
Unable to avoid it, I held my right arm that got splashed with coffee and glared back at her.
How is this according to my instructions? I said I wanted it warm with extra milk and sugar.
I made it warm with 2 glasses of milk and 2 scoops of sugar.
It's too hot. And it's common sense to take 4 glasses of milk and 3 scoops of sugar.
She again acts as if her own common sense is the world's common sense and imposes her values on others. I'm sorry. I'll make you another one right away.
This is why I don't like high school grads. I heard from my father that you're competent and trusted by everyone.
I have much to learn. It's only because of the support of everyone here that I seem competent. As she continued with her snide remarks, the pain in my burned arm intensified. My mind was occupied with trying very hard to resist the urge to get away from this place and cool my burnt arm as soon as possible. I was looking forward to meeting you after my father spoke so highly of you. But what a disappointment. I wonder how you won him over. Upon hearing her harsh words, a nearby employee tried to step in and help, but I signaled that I was okay, trying not to get noticed by her. Next, that employee would become the target of her. Those who had been targeted by her so far were mentally driven into a corner and forced to resign voluntarily. And this time, it seems that I've become the target of her. As I was pondering how to resolve the situation, she forcibly grabbed my burned arm and squeezed the burned area tightly.
You've got guts to ignore me. Don't think you'll get away with this.
I grimaced in pain. Satisfied with my reaction, she released my arm and ordered me to make coffee again. I excused myself and hurried to the pantry to cool the affected area. It sucks. After work, I immediately visited a dermatologist and got prescribed an ointment, but it never completely healed and left a mark, so I dressed in a way that others couldn't see, to avoid causing concern. From that day on, the harassment from her escalated.
What's this document? Nothing but mistakes. Don't take your job lightly.
What exactly is wrong with the document? While trying to gauge her mood, I asked, and she threw it at me.
There's no way there could be mistakes in this practice document I did. And yet, to be pointed out like this with a red pen, it's unpleasant.
I sighed at the immature behavior of such a grown adult. To be frank, this document clearly needs to be redone due to its inadequacies. You came into this department without understanding anything. I would appreciate it if you could accept the mistakes honestly and acquire knowledge appropriate for a manager. As a trainer, I've been assigning tasks to her, utilizing the experience I had with new employees so far, but nothing seemed to get through to her, a lump of pride.
Don't talk back. You guys should just do everything. I'm the manager, so I don't have to do this kind of stuff.
That's not how it works. Besides, this is what the president personally told us. You're desperate to be liked by my father, huh? Weren't you from a fatherless family? I was a little surprised when she suddenly brought up the topic of my family. Furthermore, I had never talked about this with her before. To be precise, you have only your mother now, right? Despite working so hard in a poor family, your father wasn't rewarded and fell ill. We're at work now. Let's stop discussing irrelevant topics. I just thought of having a little interaction. What a boring woman. Even I couldn't hide my irritation when she made fun of my parents. You're getting angry, huh? That's hilarious. My parents are very wonderful and respectable people. You, who know nothing, have no right to say anything. She quickly responded to the slight drop in my voice tone.
So that's your true nature, huh? Is it okay to have that attitude with the president's daughter? Maybe I should report to my father about your true nature and how I've been treated badly by you. Feel free to do so. Please correct the test document properly and submit it by today. I'm definitely gonna drive you out.
As I turned my back on her, she whispered in a voice only I could hear, but I ignored her and returned to my seat. Afterward, her sarcasm continued, but I managed to get her to learn the basics. It's still a long road ahead. Even though they were basics, it included minor things like detailed computer operations and types of documents. I sat on a bench installed on the office rooftop drinking canned coffee during the break to soothe my exhausted body. While thinking about my future, I suddenly received a call from an unknown number on my smartphone. Hello? Is this Nancy? This is Saveview Hospital. Your mother was urgently transported here, but she's in a critical condition. Can you come right away? My mind went blank, and I couldn't remember much afterward. I left an early leave notice on her desk first and caught a taxi to the hospital. Upon arriving at the hospital and explaining the situation at the reception, a nurse guided me to where my mother was.
Mom, this can't be true.
There lay my mother, with a beautiful and gentle expression, asleep. According to the doctor, my mother had collapsed at her workplace. By the time she arrived at the hospital, they were in a state of believing in miracles. Indeed, my mother's heart wasn't strong since the past. Yet, the symptoms were stable, and there were no issues during regular checkups, but the mental strain since my father passed away might have affected her, perhaps. For a time, I sobbed, hugging my mother tightly. After coming home with my mother, as the funeral date has been set, I called female manager to ask for my first ever paid leave. I'm sorry for leaving early today and causing trouble. My mother just passed on, so could I take about a week off for the funeral and all the other stuff that comes with it?
Oh, so that's why you left early when I wasn't around? It was an emergency with my mother.
Her cold and harsh tone hit hard, considering how down I was. I won't approve any paid leave for you. I couldn't believe my ears.
In the 10 years I've been here, I've never taken a day of paid leave.
So what? I've contributed so much to this company, so shouldn't I be able to take paid leave to say goodbye to my mother?
You always challenge me. You don't need to come back.
Having been told this, even I had reached my breaking point.
Are you really sure? I'll take you up on that offer.
She started ranting, but I unilaterally cut the call without a second thought. The funeral went smoothly. I couldn't just sit grieve, and I kept myself busy, handling various tasks and sending out thank you notes to those who'd been so kind. Took my mind off things for a bit. She tried reaching out multiple times, but I ignored every attempt. A bit later, I got a call from the president, so I made my way to the office after 2 weeks. I walked straight to the president's office. On my way, I bumped into 2 coworkers who consoled me. I'm sorry, but I'm going to the president's office first. Their kindness made me feel a bit better. It's Nancy. May I come in? After knocking and asking permission, I was let in promptly.
Hey there, been a while. Heard you've been out of touch for 2 weeks. Doesn't sound like you.
My apologies. You see, I laid out everything, not sugarcoating how she had been treating other employees and myself. Hearing negative stuff about his own daughter must have hurt him, but the president listened to every word. I apologize for my daughter's actions. To be honest, my wife and I spoiled her, and this is the outcome. No worries. I think my parents must have felt the same way as parents. Seeing my awkwardness, the president smiled gently.
Nancy, you're truly a wonderful lady. My daughter's situation was my judgment error. I've spoken to those who've resigned in the past 2 weeks. I can't apologize enough for that.
To the best of my knowledge, this was the first time I'd ever seen the president looking so troubled. Ever since you stopped coming to the department my daughter works in, things have gone haywire. Just the other day, the entire team staged a group protest. Really? I had no idea things had escalated that much. So, what are you going to do about it? The president wore a sad expression for a moment but quickly returned to the person I knew. So I need your help. It's easy for me to have my daughter resign, but that alone won't satisfy all employees. Can you help us? Looking into the president's earnest eyes, I made up my mind. Understood. I'm more than happy to assist. And so, the sanctions against her began.
Hey, how long do you plan on taking time off?
The exasperated female manager finally reached out. Wasn't it you who told me not to come in? It's strange, I'm just following your orders.
Don't give me that. We're in chaos here. Get to the office now.
Reluctantly, I changed into my work clothes and headed to the office. However, there wasn't a single employee present. It was eerily quiet, just like working on a weekend. It's a weekday today, right? Feels weird. It was when I muttered to myself in an empty office. I heard yelling from a woman and the sound of something being thrown from my department. Peeking cautiously inside, I saw her causing a ruckus. What's going on? I called out from behind her. She swiftly turned and grabbed at me.
It's all your fault. Ever since you stopped coming, everyone else followed suit. Now I can't get in touch with anyone. How will you make up for this?
I'm not quite following. Can you please not shift the blame? I calmly told her. She let me go and pushed me away. Such an infuriating woman. Even my father won't help. What's going on? How long has it been since everyone stopped coming?
Half a day. Because of that, I've been handling calls which I've never done, and I have no clue what to do anymore.
The slumped figure of her was pitiful. Her hair was a mess, and the nail polish that she wouldn't remove despite numerous reminders was now chipped. She must have hung her jacket somewhere. There were noticeable frays here and there on her jacket. Seeing her, who had always acted like a queen, now in such a state, I couldn't help but laugh. Serves you right. What did you say? This is on you. What did you think of everyone?
No one's going to follow someone who just waves their power around without any real skills.
As I firmly told her, she approached with her face turning red.
Say that one more time. You really want to be banned from the company?
Well, I'd like to stay if you resign.
Well then, you're fired.
I'll be taking over this company. What a pity for you. Too bad. She was wearing an eerie smile, and for some reason, she had a triumphant look on her face. I answered, all right. It was a short time, but thank you very much. It must have been an unexpected reaction. She had her eyes wide open in surprise. You do realize you're fired, right?
Of course. Now I should pack up my things.
I carefully made my way to my desk, avoiding the papers scattered on the floor. Once there, I started pulling out stuff from the drawers. Wait. Are you really quitting? Yes, why? I asked, tilting my head. Well, shouldn't you at least finish up today's work? Her earlier confidence had disappeared, and she seemed desperate. Do you know that it's illegal to reject a properly justified paid leave request without a valid reason? Huh? It's a violation of labor laws, you know. It's mandated by law. Her face turned ashen. She was clearly in turmoil, but I continued. We're all human. I understand there are compatibility issues. But that doesn't mean you should drive people into a corner. You're unfit to be a manager. Makes me wonder what your folks are like.
Who the hell do you think you are? Insulting my parents like that? You're not getting off easy.
Well, you insulted my parents too, so you're not getting off easy either. She, shaking with rage, tried to put on a brave face.
Our worlds are entirely different. Don't lump me with you.
You're really despicable. I heard you said the same thing and drove those who left into a corner.
That's right. They treated me like I was worthless, so I drove them into a corner as far as I could. Felt so refreshing when they were gone.
I sighed deeply, shifting my gaze to the corridor. Curious, she followed my gaze, muttering, Father? Why are you here? There stood the president. As the president stepped into the department, he walked directly to her. Father, there's been a misunderstanding.
No need for explanations. I've got evidence of your deeds.
No, they just envied me for my skills and set me up. I did nothing wrong. The president lashed out at her, who tried to justify her actions.
You idiot. Because you're so incompetent, I was hoping the competent employees would reform you. Yet under your lead, in the past few months, our performance plummeted and even caused losses to the company.
But you made me a manager, so that means you had faith in me, hadn't you? I promise I'll meet your expectations this time.
No. If I didn't give you a position, you'd have run away.
The president's imposing demeanor made her buckle.
I never even thought of letting you take over the company. This time for sure, I'll transfer you to the countryside to reform you from the ground up. Please, have mercy.
Look who's talking. We'll get constant updates from your new location. And the folks there are pretty reliable, so brace yourself. Turning pale, she lay on her back, crying and laughing hysterically. I chirped, too bad. With a bright and cheerful voice, I said that to her. Later that day, without anyone to see her off, the former female manager left the company. The next day, the employees, enjoying the day off declared by the president, returned to work jubilant. With the departure of the former female manager, peaceful days were restored, and smiles returned to the employees' faces. Meanwhile, the former female manager started from scratch in a rural town where there were no conveniences or entertainment. There, her family's influence didn't matter, and she was strictly schooled by her colleagues every day. As the days passed, she began to change, and finally, she started to speak respectfully and became receptive to feedback from others, as reported by the president. The most surprising thing was receiving an apology call from her. At first, I listened to her, but at the end of the call, she begged, I've reflected enough. I want you to ask the president to let me return. Of course, my answer was no. I ignored further calls and blocked her number. The president personally contacted those who had resigned due to her and invited them back. As a result, the company's performance quickly recovered, even surpassing its previous state. As for me, I was sitting in the seat of the manager, which became vacant after she left. When the president personally appointed me, everyone in the department was even happier than I was. While the managerial job is tougher than I imagined and I am a bit overwhelmed by my sudden career move, with the support of the employees, I am doing well. Having been both physically and mentally hurt, especially with burns, I have been compensated with settlement money deducted from the former female manager's salary, which has been added to my own pay. Thanks to that, my life has become very comfortable.
Recently, my boyfriend of 2 years proposed to me, and I am over the moon.
We are expecting a child next year, and both of us are excited. Even though I have just entered my second trimester, we are already fully prepared for the birth. In a note written in my husband's handwriting, it said he'd be on a business trip for a month. Seeing it, I was certain. Our marriage was over. It was that night, alone in a room with no one around, lost in thought. What's happening now? In the dead of night while my husband was away, I suddenly heard the cry of a baby. I rushed to the front door and found a letter. And it read, "I can't raise him." To my astonishment, there was a baby inside a cardboard box along with the letter.
Why is there a baby here?
It was a situation I had only seen on TV shows. My mind raced, unsure of what to do, and the next thing I knew, I was calling my husband.
Don't bother me when I'm busy. You're getting in the way.
My husband snapped at me for calling. But when I told him about the baby, he responded with startling words.
We're gonna raise this child. Got it?
With that, he hung up. His words lingered in my mind. There was definitely something going on. Well, I've got my own suspicions. At this point, 1 or 2 more problems don't matter. I'll find out everything and drag you down. My name is Jessica. I'm a 40-year-old housewife. I used to work for a major corporation, but I resigned when I married my husband, Mike. I met Mike about 5 years ago. Back then, he came to the company I worked for as a salesman. He was cheerful and a bit of a joker. I wondered then if he was cut out for sales. But when it came to work, he spoke seriously and clearly, surprising all the coworkers. I still remember how he left such an impression on me. A month later, while taking a break on a park bench near the office, a man in a suit approached and asked, "Is this seat taken?" Feeling annoyed, I didn't look at the man's face and just said, "Sure," intending to leave the spot. But then the man hurriedly stopped me. "Hey there, Ms. Johnson. How've you been?" Wondering how he knew my last name, I looked at him. "Oh? Mr. Smith? Good to see you. Thanks for the other day." "Thank you." "Thanks to you, Mr. Johnson, everything at work went smoothly." "I really appreciate it." Mike, who I hadn't seen in a while, was just as playful as before, chatting up a storm with me. I naturally talked to him about work and everyday life. From then on, whenever I took a break, Mike was always there beside me. Although it was just for a short time, I cherished the moments spent with Mike, and soon found myself wanting to be with him all the time. Turns out, Mike felt the same way. How about a real date? Not just a 1-hour break, but a genuine date. Yes. That was the turning point for us. We became a couple, and a year later, we got married. And this year, we celebrated our 4th wedding anniversary. Jessica, thanks for being with me all these years. Same goes for you. Thanks for always cherishing me. Celebrating our wedding anniversary together. I was overwhelmed with emotion, feeling so fortunate to have married Mike, and tears welled up. Jessica, it's become a yearly tradition for you to cry, huh? Shush. They're happy tears, okay? Give me a break.
I get it.
This happiness will last forever. Back then, that's what I believed. But as our 5th anniversary approached, I realized that had been just an illusion. For the past 6 months, Mike's been coming home late. He used to always come home right on time, but now he's usually home after 8 p.m.
Honey, how much longer are these late nights gonna last?
It's been half a year. This never used to happen. Doesn't it seem strange? Business hasn't been great. At this rate, our bonuses are gonna get cut. Everyone's working their tails off. Under normal circumstances, I would have believed him, but something felt off to me. My husband's company, although considered a small to medium-sized business, is quite well known around here. Their revenues have been increasing year after year, and they're always hiring new employees. Can a company like that suddenly experience a drop in sales? Having employees work overtime for half a year because of tight sales is simply not normal. I don't want to doubt my husband's words, but there's this nagging feeling deep down. Oh, by the way, I'm gonna head out for a bit. Huh? You just got home. I'm just meeting someone I know, that's okay, right? Considering he's been working late recently, I figured it wouldn't hurt to let him go once in a while. Just don't be out too late, okay? You've got work tomorrow. Thanks. I'll be back soon. Mike quickly changed into his casual clothes and with a big grin, left to meet his friend. That night, Mike didn't return home until past midnight. Oh, sorry, did I wake you? You're okay? That's pretty late. We just got caught up chatting, and it got late. I see. I'm sleepy, so I'm gonna head to bed. Good night. The next morning, when I woke up, Mike, who usually sleeps beside me, was nowhere to be found. Rubbing my sleepy eyes and looking around, he was still missing. Checking my phone, it was just past 5 a.m., even before my alarm. Mike? I called out, but there was no answer from him. I wondered where he went and headed to the living room, only to find Mike sound asleep on the couch. Why are you sleeping here? I tried to wake him up to get him to bed, but Mike didn't budge. And then something fell from his hand to my feet. Is that his phone? I picked up the dropped phone intending to place it on the table. That's when I noticed the image of a woman's back on the phone's screen. Who is this? A celebrity? I guess it's fine. I put my phone on the table. Can't get back to sleep now. Maybe I should take a walk. I left my husband sleeping on the couch and decided to go for a walk. Stepping outside, the warm sunlight and a refreshing breeze greeted me.
Ah, this feels so good.
Morning walks on a sunny day are the best. It's a great way to start the day. After about an hour, I came back home. When I entered the living room, I found my husband looking sternly at my phone. Good morning. Why the long face? Want something to drink? No thanks. Usually, he'd reply with a smile, but today he seemed off. Maybe he's just groggy from sleep? But then, his next words made me realize it was something different.
Hey, can you not talk to me so much in the morning?
Huh? It's just, you're kind of annoying. I was taken aback. He'd never spoken to me like that before. Without another word, he went to our bedroom, changed into his suit, and left for work without breakfast. Without our usual morning hug. While I was doing housework, puzzled by my husband's strange behavior this morning, my cell phone rang from an unknown caller. Normally, I wouldn't answer calls from unknown numbers, but for some reason, I picked up this time. Hello? Hi, is this Jessica? Yes, who's this?
It's been a while. It's Sarah. Sarah Lewis. Remember we worked together a while back?
Lewis. Sarah Lewis. Then it hit me. 12 years ago, right after graduating from college, I worked at a convenience store for a short time. Back then, Sarah Lewis, who was still in high school, worked there too. Why on earth was she calling me now? And how did she get my cell number? It's been ages, Sarah. I never expected a call from you. It's quite a surprise. I never thought I'd call you either, Jessica. If it weren't for that crazy coincidence, I wouldn't have. But I thought, why not give it a shot? She was always like this. She probably doesn't mean any harm, but there's always something about Sarah that gets under my skin. That's just so typical of her. So, what's this big coincidence? You're not gonna believe this. I work at the same company as Mike. Your husband, Mike. Really? When I heard from Mike that his wife's name was Jessica, I wondered if it was you. And it turned out I was right. When I told Mike we used to work together, he gave me your number. It was indeed a crazy coincidence that the girl I worked with back then was now working with my husband. But at the same time, I felt a bit betrayed that Mike gave her my number without asking me first. I'm glad you called, but aren't you working right now? Is it okay to be on the phone?
Obviously, it's not, but now that I've heard your voice, I should get back to work. Talk to you later. Bye.
She's still as lively as ever. I never thought I'd hear her voice again after 15 years. It made me a little nostalgic, thinking about the old times. It's been 15 years since then. And later that night. I'm home. Welcome back. You must be tired. The bath is ready, so you can hop in. Wait, what? From behind my husband, a woman suddenly appeared and greeted, "Good evening." A colleague from work?
It's me. Sarah.
Unbelievably, my husband had come home with Sarah, who had called earlier that day. Both of them held large shopping bags in their hands. Hold on a minute. I wasn't told you'd be coming over. When Sarah called earlier, she said she'd catch up later. You should have figured she'd come today. As a wife, you should know these things. I was slightly infuriated by my husband's irrational comment, but held my tongue since we had a guest. I wonder if they're that close, calling Sarah with such a friendly nickname? Hee hee. I caught a brief chuckle from her. What was that? While I was distracted, the two had moved into the living room. I let out a sigh and followed, only to find them laying out a bunch of alcohol and snacks from their bags on the table. What do you think you're doing?
We're gonna have some drinks here. Mike said we should drink at home, so I bought a bunch.
That's not enough, make us something. I wasn't expecting this. I only made dinner for the two of us. With that, Mike gave me a cold look and said, "Then go buy something now." What's with that attitude?
Excuse me? You have a problem when I'm the one feeding you?
His chilly gaze was now replaced with a commanding tone. This was nothing like the Mike I knew, and as I tried to hide my shock, she gave me a sly smile. Even in my own home, what is this overwhelming feeling of alienation? Unable to bear being there any longer, I immediately headed out to do some shopping.
What the hell?
Although worried someone might hear, I couldn't stop muttering to myself. This continued even as I shopped at the grocery store. This should be enough. An hour later, I returned to the apartment after finishing my shopping. Standing at the front door, I took a deep breath and opened it, only to find an eerie silence enveloping the place. Hello? There was no sound of their voices. I gently opened the living room door and saw the two of them, snuggled up on the couch, asleep like a couple. I stood there, frozen, unable to process what was happening right before my eyes. And from that day on, Sarah's visits to our home became frequent. She'd come over with Mike, and they'd casually start their evening drinks as if it was second nature. Hey, get us something to eat. I'd love a steak, please. Come on now. If you heard her, hurry up and get it. It felt as though I had been relegated to a mere housemaid, taken for granted. Mike doted on Sarah, and it was evident he hardly had me in his thoughts anymore. On her part, Sarah often threw condescending remarks my way, making me feel utterly humiliated. I'd never felt so low. My feelings towards the two of them were nothing but negative. Ever since Sarah started calling, I felt like I had been living in a never-ending nightmare. I bore the brunt of their taunts and verbal abuse. I often found myself wanting to escape this toxic environment. 6 months after Sarah started visiting, she suddenly stopped showing up. Around the same time, Mike began coming home even later. One morning, I woke up and noticed Mike wasn't in bed. I headed to the living room and found a note on the table. In Mike's handwriting, it simply read, "Gonna be on a business trip for a month." Seeing that, I was certain. I realized our marriage was over. One night, as I sat alone in the empty room lost in thought. What was that? In the middle of the night, while Mike was away, I suddenly heard the cries of a baby. I rushed to the front door and found a letter. It read, "I can't raise this child." Incredibly, inside the cardboard box was a baby, along with a letter.
Why is there a baby?
It was a situation I had only ever seen on TV shows, but now it was happening to me. My mind raced in panic, unsure of what to do, and before I knew it, I was calling my husband.
Don't bother me when I'm busy. You're disturbing me.
He was furious that I had called. But when I told him about the baby, he replied with shocking words.
We're gonna raise that child. Got it?
And with that, he hung up. His words lingered in my mind. Something was definitely up. But I had my own plans. I didn't care if one or two more troubles came up now. So, I'll uncover everything and bring you down to rock bottom. After that, I quickly grabbed some things and left the apartment. 2 hours by car. It's been a long time since I've been back. Even outside the apartment, there was a place for me to go.
Welcome home.
Mom, I'm back. I had already informed my mother that I would be returning. At the same time, I had asked her for a favor. Mom, about that favor I asked. I've made the contacts, Jessica. Now, all you need to do is act. Though I had come back to my parents' house thinking of resting and healing from everything, there was no time for that. My husband, Mike, would be back from his business trip in a month. I had things that needed to be done by then. One day, as I was cleaning the room, Mike called. Hello?
Hey! Where the heck are you right now?
My husband was immediately aggressive on the phone.
You call out of the blue? What on earth could someone on a business trip possibly want? I don't give a darn about that. Where are you?
I came back early. It's amazing you still have a job. Normally, you'd be the first on the layoff list.
Shut it. Just tell me where you are.
No matter what I said, Mike insisted on knowing my location, making it impossible to have a conversation. I'm at my parents' house.
The kid's there with you, right?
Yes, sleeping soundly in the back room. Come back with the child right now. Got it? Get back here immediately. His behavior was so different from before, it reminded me of the man he once was. You've changed a lot. You weren't like this before.
People change, Jessica. Anyway, don't forget what I just told you. Understand?
With that, Mike hung up. It's absurd. But if he hasn't mentioned that thing, does that mean he hasn't noticed it? If he returned to the apartment, he'd definitely see it. If that's the case, it makes sense. It became clear that Mike wasn't at the apartment. Not wanting to waste this opportunity, I drove straight there. Upon arriving, I grabbed that from the table and immediately headed to a specific location. 20 minutes later, I arrived at a single-family apartment complex. You live in a pretty nice place. There was a familiar compact car parked in front of the apartment. Just as I thought. A familiar compact car. It's Mike's car. And the fact that it's parked here is proof that my husband must be here. What could be so important that he'd cut his business trip short to be here? At that moment. Then it happened. From inside the house, I heard a woman's scream. And right after that, a man's furious shout echoed. This might be bad. I quickly pulled out my cell from my bag and called someone. However, throughout that time, cries from the woman and shouts from the man continued to emanate from the house. Just when I was getting really worried, a car pulled up behind me. Oh. I rang the doorbell, but no one answered. On a whim, I tried the doorknob and to my surprise, it was unlocked. I cautiously opened the door and called out, but there was no response. From deeper within the house, a voice cried out for help. Rushing to the room from where the voice came, I found a man menacingly approaching Sarah with a look of fury on his face. Why are you here?
What are you doing? You shouldn't be threatening a woman like this, especially as an adult. Shut up. Stay out of it. This is between me and her.
A problem, huh? I couldn't help but think, isn't the problem yourself, in my mind?
Jessica. Please help me. He suddenly attacked me.
All right. I can see what's happening, so you don't have to spell it out for me.
Well, what? You just told him not to treat women like this. And now you're being so dismissive of me? Can't you see I'm in distress?
That's because I get it, okay? Just be quiet for a second. I've got things to handle. While Sarah was complaining about something, I had more pressing matters to attend to. I have more important things to deal with than that. I stepped outside the house for a moment and headed towards a car parked outside. I called out, "Excuse me," and from inside the car, a well-built man stepped out. And with that man, I headed back to the room where the two were.
Who's this old man? Why's he here?
Upon seeing the new arrival, both of them froze. Allow me to introduce you. This is Sarah's father, Mr. Carter.
What?
Seeing Sarah's father, Mike instantly distanced himself from Sarah, a complete change from his previous demeanor. On the other hand, Sarah's face turned pale as a ghost at the sight of her father and she froze, looking down. Nice to meet you. I'm Carter, Sarah's father. Jessica called me over. What the heck is going on here? Sarah, what's your relationship with this man? The two clearly looked intimidated by Carter's imposing tone and demeanor. He's my husband.
What? So, you're telling me you were having an affair with my daughter?
Well, that's one way to put it. At that moment, Carter's face turned fierce, glaring at Mike with piercing eyes. Mike looked like a deer caught in headlights, completely frozen. Soon, Carter's face was inches away from Mike's. Mike looked utterly clueless about what to do next.
You made your bed, now lie in it.
It wasn't clear if it was these words that broke Mike's spirit, but he collapsed on the spot. From her bag, I took out a paper and placed it in front of Mike. I think you'll understand when you see it, it's a divorce paper. My name's already on it. You just need to sign. She also placed a pen next to it. Defeated, Mike signed the divorce paper without resistance. Thanks. As for alimony, my lawyer will be in touch later. We'll discuss the details then. Mike silently nodded. But this incident wasn't over. Standing nearby was the very man who had ruined Jessica's life. You're truly despicable. You played with my feelings, always threatening to leave. And this is how you end things? Jessica spat these words out at her ex-husband. But, to her surprise, he responded with newfound vigor.
You say I played with you? Don't kid yourself. You were the one who approached me first. Saying you had feelings for me. Saying you wanted to be with me. If it wasn't for you, my life wouldn't have turned out this way. What the heck? Anyone who'd take that seriously is the fool. First off, thinking you're some big catch is your first mistake. Because of you, my life's a complete mess. Being seen by my dad in a place like this is just the worst. Huh? What's that supposed to mean? If anyone's the worst here, it's you. I turned you down, but you kept saying you wanted our baby. And when the baby came, you said it wasn't what you intended, that you didn't expect to really have a child. That you wanted to live your life and wanted a break, but you didn't want the responsibility of the child. So, leave it to me, right? You're way more to be blamed. I didn't say all that.
This is going nowhere, and listening to this nonsense is just a waste of time. Okay, stop. I've heard enough from both of you, just cut it out. You're making everyone irritated. The two looked over, panting, as if wanting to say something. I could tell they wanted to say something, but probably seeing Carter standing next to me, they seemed too scared to utter a word. I get it, if you have a big, intimidating guy like that staring you down, you'd be too scared to say anything. Then Carter suddenly asked Sarah. What's going on with this story? Are you pregnant with his child?
Oh, no, Dad, it's not like that. I didn't want this, but he was so pushy.
Darn it. I completely forgot to mention that Sarah was pregnant.
What? Why are you blaming me? You were the one who came on to me. It's not true. I didn't do anything. How can a baby come if you didn't do anything?
Adding fuel to the fire. You.
That's right. If you hadn't done anything, none of this would have happened. I probably shouldn't have invited him in the first place. Hey, hold on.
She added more. I thought we were pretty much done, but since we're here, I'll give you this. I casually tossed several photos onto the table. Those pictures undeniably proved their affair. These are pictures capturing the two of you in the act. It was a real hassle getting these. While you were on your business trip, I had the divorce papers drawn up and hired a detective. All this in such a short time, you know? Why would you go through all that trouble? Well, I had to. I can draw up the divorce papers myself, but to catch you two cheating, I needed a pro. It did cost me a pretty penny, but thanks to that, I got the evidence. I'm just presenting it a bit late, but you have to really take in the fact that you cheated, right? The sight of the incriminating photos completely deflated the two. Just as they thought it was over. You two better be ready for what's coming. What? Dad. Carter only found out about Sarah and Mike's affair moments ago. And it was only from words. Upon seeing the photos, he realized that they really were having an affair. Sarah, I'm taking you straight home. We'll decide what to do next once we're there. And Mike, you'll have to pay Jessica alimony, right? You need the money ASAP, don't you? I know a place where you can make good money. Upon hearing this, both were trembling in fear. Days later, both of them resigned from their jobs. The reason was that news of their affair had spread throughout the office, making it uncomfortable for them to stay. Later, as Carter told it, Sarah tried to go back to her parents' home and hoped they would forgive her. However, their anger didn't subside, and she was kicked out along with her baby. Now, she's living in a rundown apartment, working day and night to support her child. As for her ex-husband, he's working at a high-paying job Carter recommended to cover the alimony and child support. Apparently, it's a job at sea, and once he leaves, he can't return for several months. Well, after such a betrayal, it's only fitting. As for me, I stayed at my parents' home. My mother helps with the housework, and I have found a new job and made some new friends. Life feels more fulfilling now. My parents often ask when I'll marry again, but I think I'll wait for a while. Maybe when I meet the right person, I'll think about it. For now, I want to enjoy this life.
My wife will be gone by tomorrow.
During our honeymoon, I woke up in the middle of the night to overhear my husband secretly having a terrifying conversation on the phone. Trembling with fear, I dared to peek into his smartphone to find out what he was talking about. What I found was beyond belief. Knowing of my husband's plan, I took his passport and flew back to the States on my own. As I was planning to utterly destroy him, someone suddenly approached me. My name is Karen. I'm just an ordinary office worker in New York. I met my husband, Brian, through mutual friends. We hit it off after a few dinners out, and after dating for a year, we just recently got married. Brian is handsome and has a really kind personality, but there was one major problem. This happened one day just before our wedding. I'm home. Normally, Brian gets home from work later than I do, but on this day, I had to work late, so I got home after him. As I walked in and was about to take off my shoes, I noticed something odd.
Were these shoes always here?
There were not only Brian's work shoes, but also a pair of women's heels. Could he be cheating? I thought. Listening carefully, I could hear muffled voices. It was a man and a woman talking, and I immediately recognized Brian's voice. I couldn't make out the entire conversation, but I could hear a woman's voice laughing along. In the spur of the moment, I started recording with my smartphone and burst into the living room.
Huh?
There was Brian and my mother-in-law.
Oh, welcome back. Karen, welcome home. Sorry for intruding.
Relieved that it wasn't an affair, the living room scene was still quite bizarre. Boxes were piled up everywhere. Confused, I asked, "What's with all these boxes?" Brian responded, "Oh, these? We're moving." My mom came over to help pack. I was so confused I felt like my brain might explode.
Moving? Where to? I never heard about this. Oh, Brian. You didn't tell Karen? Sorry, I've been so busy with work. I'm so sorry, Karen. I told him if you're gonna get married, you should move into our house. It looks like Brian didn't mention it to you.
Live in her house? I was more confused than ever. I was looking forward to starting our newlywed life together, just the two of us. This is a huge deal. I have to put a stop to this. So, I said, I haven't been told anything about this. I can't just agree to something decided without me. But then they said, it's normal for newlyweds to live with their in-laws, you know? If you can't, maybe you should reconsider the marriage. Mom's right. Plus, I'm used to my house. It'll be easier for you too if anything happens. Two birds with one stone, right? With my mother-in-law present, I couldn't argue with Brian, and it was decided that we'd move into his parents' home. Turns out, Brian is very much a mama's boy. In retrospect, had I been more assertive back then, maybe things wouldn't have turned out this way. Living with my in-laws was incredibly tough for me. Ever since we started living at my husband's parents' house, his mama's boy tendencies accelerated. The first person he'd ask for anything was always Mom. While my mother-in-law took care of most of the cooking and household chores, the rare times I made dinner he would say, "My mom's cooking tastes better." Perhaps my mother-in-law enjoyed being relied on by her son because she did everything for him. My father-in-law would just turn a blind eye to this behavior and not only ignored me but wouldn't even look at me. Sometimes, when I tried talking to him, he'd just brush me off. I constantly questioned my place in the household. The biggest concern for me was my mother-in-law's extravagant spending habits. After moving in, I realized she adored branded clothes and bags. Every time her favorite brands released something new, she'd buy it. Every release, she'd approach me saying, "Karen, I really want this, but I'm a bit short on cash right now. Could you maybe lend me a little?" Even though I thought she shouldn't buy it if she couldn't afford it, since she did all the cooking and cleaning, I couldn't object and just gave her the money as asked. Thanks to this, the savings I had accumulated since my college days were nearly gone. When I tried discussing this with my husband, he just said, "We're living here rent-free, so don't complain. It's not like I chose to live here." Still, the reason I didn't leave was that my husband, for all his faults, genuinely cared for me. Whenever we both had a day off, he'd take me out on dates and he had even planned our honeymoon. Living with the in-laws was tough, but I kept going, holding on to the hope in his kindness. Finally, the day of our honeymoon that my husband planned arrived. Our destination was Italy. It was a dream come true for me as I always wanted to try authentic Italian cuisine. The thought of traveling abroad with the love of my life made me so excited. However, my excitement for the honeymoon turned into a nightmare due to one thing my husband said. It happened late at night. I woke up wanting to go to the bathroom and noticed my husband wasn't next to me. Assuming he was also in the restroom, I approached and heard him speaking on the phone. Who could he be talking to at this hour? Listening closer, I heard some shocking words. "My wife's gonna be gone tomorrow."
What?
"Don't worry, Mom. I've got it all planned. I'll get back to you." It seemed he was talking to my mother-in-law. But what did he mean by "gonna be gone"? Fearful, I quickly returned to bed and pretended to be asleep. After a while, my husband came back to bed and soon began snoring. Making sure he was asleep, I stealthily took his smartphone and headed to the bathroom. Luckily, he didn't have a password on it. As wrong as it felt, given the circumstances, I had to look. Opening his messages, I found a terrifying plan detailed in the chats with his mother. They were scheming to take my life for the insurance money, which my mother-in-law intended to spend on branded items. The fear was overwhelming. I couldn't believe that my husband, who had always been kind to me, was plotting this with his mother. I took photos of their conversation with my own phone and returned to bed. The rest of the night, I was too frightened to sleep. As dawn broke and transport services started operating, I realized I needed to leave for my safety. Gathering only my belongings, I decided to leave the hotel on my own. Just as I was about to leave, I spotted my husband's passport on the desk.
A good idea just hit me.
I took my husband Brian's passport and left the room, in an attempt to strand him abroad. I then headed to the airport, boarded the plane, and returned to New York ahead of him. Throughout that time, Brian kept calling me relentlessly, but I ignored all his calls. Once back in New York, I began preparing to take revenge on my husband and his mother. Since I was living with his parents, I couldn't return home. So, I based myself in a relatively cheap hotel in the city, gathering more evidence and contacting lawyers. I also made occasional visits to our house when his parents were out, sneaking out some of my belongings bit by bit. Brian continued to reach out, but I kept ignoring him. A few days of such life passed, and I was at his parents' house fetching my belongings. His mother, Karen, was at her knitting class, and his father was out golfing. I figured they wouldn't be back for at least 2 hours. As I was packing, I suddenly heard, "Huh? Karen?" I turned around to find my father-in-law standing there. This wasn't good. Brian and I were supposed to be on our honeymoon in Italy until today.
What are you doing here? Weren't you two supposed to be on your honeymoon?
What should I do? What excuse could I possibly give? Should I be honest about why I returned to New York alone? But what if my father-in-law was in on whatever scheme Brian was planning? These thoughts raced in my mind. Seeing my confusion, he said, "It might be better to talk over a coffee. How about we go to a nearby diner?" Not wanting to be there when my mother-in-law returns, I agreed to his suggestion. Once we sat at the diner, he quickly asked, "So, why are you here when you should be abroad? What happened to Brian?" I was hesitant to tell the truth. If he was in on the plan with her and Brian, everything I had worked on would be ruined. "Didn't your wife tell you anything?" I asked, trying to gauge his knowledge. Looking puzzled, he responded, "I haven't heard a thing." His reaction suggested that he genuinely didn't know anything. Believing him, I decided to lay out everything to him.
"Are you aware of this plan?"
I then showed him the printed messages exchanged between Brian and my mother-in-law. His face was one of sheer shock.
"No way! I've seen them whispering together a few times, but I never thought they were plotting something like this."
It seemed like my father-in-law really didn't know.
"Yes, when I was over there, I overheard my husband talking on the phone with his mom, and that's when I found out. I got scared, so I returned to the US on my own earlier." "I'm so sorry. My wife really owes you an apology."
"Please don't apologize.
You haven't done anything wrong. As for the future, I feel terrible asking this of you, but I'm thinking of divorcing Brian."
"That's completely up to you, Karen. I'm truly sorry, especially since this should have been a happy time as newlyweds." He apologized to me many times. I used to think he was avoiding me, maybe even disliked me, but he spoke to me with such kindness and concern. Despite him being such a good man, I can't fathom how his wife and my husband turned out the way they did. While I was thinking about this, he shared a story with me. "Karen, you've been forced to buy branded items for my wife, haven't you?"
"Well, yeah, I have."
"You know, it might have been my fault."
"Excuse me?"
"Well, it was shortly after my wife and I got married. I gifted her a designer handbag for her birthday. After that, she became totally obsessed with designer brands. Even at this age, she keeps wearing those expensive brands. I kinda wish she'd dress more age-appropriately."
"I see.
There were times when she'd even go into debt just to buy them. I was pretty mad at her then."
I never imagined she'd ask you to buy stuff for her now. I'm really sorry about that.
I had no idea that my mother-in-law's obsession with brands had such a backstory. Still, I couldn't forgive her for what she'd done.
It's not your fault. She continued her habits even after you got mad at her. She's the one to blame. Right. By the way, how's Brian doing? He was supposed to be back by now, wasn't he? About that.
Oh no. I wondered how he'd react knowing that his son was stuck overseas. But I had come this far, I had to tell him everything.
Actually, I took Brian's passport with me when I came back to the States. So, he won't be coming back for a while. What?
I'm sorry. I know it's wrong, but it was the only way to smoothly proceed with the divorce.
I see. Well, since you live with us, I guess it's understandable. So, that's what was going on. Did something happen? No, just remembered the day you returned to the US. I overheard Brian talking to my wife on the phone.
According to the father-in-law, Brian, for a moment, seemed panicked without me, but he later said that things would work out if I just disappeared. At the time, he had no idea what they were talking about, but now it made sense to him.
I understand the situation. If you're okay with it, I'll support you, Karen. Really? Thank you so much.
While we were talking, my phone suddenly rang. It was from Brian. Given the time, he probably realized his passport was missing. I finally answered the call.
Hello? Oh! Karen! Thank God you answered. Where the heck are you? I've been worried sick. But I'm just glad you're safe. I'm sorry for making you worry. I had an urgent call from my family back home and had to return. Things got so hectic that I couldn't get in touch. I get it. But hey, have you seen my passport? I was gonna return today, but I can't find it. About that, I accidentally took your passport with me when I rushed back. What? So what am I supposed to do? You should be able to get a replacement passport there. It'll probably be faster than me sending it to you. A replacement? What about my job? I can't take any more days off. Don't worry, I'll explain everything to your company. I'll also talk to your parents about it. All right then.
I'm sorry. So, that's what's going on. Please be careful when you come back. With that, I hung up the phone.
Karen, you sure can spin a tall tale, can't ya? I've always been crafty, that's for sure.
Thanks to my father-in-law supporting me, I was able to proceed with the divorce preparations more smoothly. And finally, the day arrived. Brian managed to get his passport reissued and returned to the States. His mom went to the airport to pick him up, so the two of them came back home together.
We're home. Man, what an ordeal. Indeed. All because of Karen.
After hearing from Brian that I'd returned to the States before him, his mother, apparently upset that their plan failed, started making sarcastic comments towards me. I wanted to snap back at her, but I held my tongue. No worries. They're gonna get what's coming to them soon. As soon as Brian and his mother entered the house, my father-in-law, with a stern look, said, "Both of you, come here." He led them to the living room where I was waiting.
Sit down.
Brian and his mother seemed a bit flustered, but they couldn't defy his imposing demeanor, so they sat down obediently.
I apologize for bringing this up as soon as you guys got back, but there's something really important we need to discuss. Important? I'll cut to the chase. Brian, I want a divorce. Divorce? Hold on, Karen. What's this all about? You trap my son in Italy and then demand a divorce when he comes back? There's a limit to being unreasonable. Unreasonable? Aren't you the unreasonable ones here? What do you mean? Oh, so you're playing dumb now? Can you explain this then?
Saying this, I showed them pictures of the messages exchanged between Brian and his mother.
What's this? These can be easily fabricated these days. This isn't valid proof. You're right. This might be weak as evidence. But what about this?
I then presented a voice recorder. Pressing the play button, the recording of a phone conversation between Brian and his mother played. My father-in-law had recorded it for me. Since his wife is hard of hearing, she always turns the speaker volume to the max during calls, making it audible throughout the house. My father-in-law took the opportunity to record them. The conversation revealed that since I had safely returned to the US, their scheme had failed. It also included the disappointed voice of my mother-in-law and my husband discussing their next move.
You can't deny this now, can you? Wait, Karen. Please reconsider the divorce. I only did what my mom told me to. I never wanted any of this. But she kept saying she needed more money to buy her favorite designer items. I just wanted to see her happy. But now, I see the light. I don't want to divorce you. Let's leave right now and live happily. It's not too late, right?
I was utterly dumbfounded by his words. How on earth could he come up with such a delusional fantasy in his head?
You know, I've always thought this, but you really need to stop with the whole mommy thing. It's super creepy. I get that you want to please her, but trying to get rid of your wife and using the insurance money to buy her fancy stuff? No way I'm staying with someone like that. Just the thought gives me a headache.
Brian looked utterly defeated by my words.
In any case, I will definitely be seeking a divorce. Plus, I will also ask for reimbursement for all the designer items you bought with my money. What? But then I won't be able to buy designer items.
Even after all this, she still seems obsessed with designer brands. I'm truly dumbfounded by this mother and son duo.
Enough is enough.
Suddenly, my father-in-law interjected.
All you care about is yourselves. Do you realize how terrified Karen has been because of your actions? Are designer items really worth it to you, even if it means using someone else's money? Do you realize how much trouble you've caused her?
The two of them were taken aback by his outburst. Thanks to him speaking up for me, I felt a bit relieved. But my revenge wasn't over yet.
Wait a sec. When did you find out about this? On the first night of our honeymoon in Italy. I overheard you talking to your mom in the middle of the night. So, that's why you flew back to New York the next morning. You didn't tell my company about this, did you? You're finally catching on? Well, you'll know the answer to that soon enough.
Just as I said that, Brian's phone started ringing at the perfect timing.
It's from the company. You gotta be kidding me.
Hesitantly, Brian answered.
Hello? What? Fired? No, wait. It's all a misunderstanding.
Before he could explain, the call seemed to have been cut off. Just so you know, I've already provided evidence of this to your company. Having lost both his wife and job, Brian seemed drained of energy and slumped to the floor.
So, from now on, let's communicate through my lawyer. And stay out of my life, okay?
And just like that, our newlywed life came to an end. The story didn't stop with the divorce. My lawyer, whom I'd been consulting with, told me that even just plotting to kill someone was a crime, so I reported the matter to the police. While they weren't arrested, both of them had to pay a hefty fine. Thanks to having a criminal record, Brian struggled to find a new job, and Karen became the talk of the town. Moreover, to pay for the damages and alimony, almost all of the designer goods Karen had hoarded were sold off. The only thing left was a purse, a birthday gift from her husband. From now on, the household finances will be managed by her husband, and Karen's pocket money would be reduced. Seems like they got a taste of their own medicine. As for me, I'm living alone in a condo in Manhattan. While I did divorce shortly after getting married, I didn't feel lonely at all. Rather, I felt liberated. If possible, I'd never want to live with someone else again. Sure, living alone has its challenges, but not having to constantly be wary of someone else is more than worth it. And no more dealing with Karen's money grubbing. I've started saving bit by bit, hoping that someday, I'd find happiness with someone else.
How dare you?
With those words from my mother-in-law, I was kicked out of the house. My mother-in-law, Patricia, had been injured and was urgently taken to the hospital. I had rushed there with my husband, Mark, only to be suddenly confronted with such an accusation. All eyes, including those of my husband and father-in-law named Bill, turned to me. And so, I was expelled from the family for an unfounded crime. But I had no memory of doing anything wrong. Later, with advice from a certain individual, I realized there was a shocking truth about Patricia. My name is Sarah. I'm a 37-year-old housewife. I've been a housewife since I got married to Mark 10 years ago. I don't have many friends, so I mostly stay at home. Mark and I have been dating since college and decided to get married a while after we both started working. A few years back, we started living with my father-in-law Bill and mother-in-law Patricia. Originally, we wanted to have kids, and decided against living together considering the kids. But, we found out we had trouble conceiving. We tried infertility treatments desperately, but couldn't have a child. Continuing the treatments would not only be expensive but also mentally stressful, so we decided not to have children. That's when talks about living with my in-laws began. Honestly, I wasn't too keen on the idea. But my in-laws didn't seem like bad people, so I thought maybe living with them might be okay. We began living together on the condition that Mark would always have my back. Considering the age of Patricia and Bill, I handled most of the household chores. I'd wake up at 5 a.m., adjusting to their schedule, and make breakfast. Lunch was made according to their individual schedules. I did the cleaning daily and sometimes even drove them to the hospital when I had some spare time. I did my best for my in-laws and I thought our relationship wasn't that bad. But one day, I overheard a conversation between Patricia and Bill. That day, I had plans to have lunch with a friend, so I made lunch for my in-laws early and left the house. I was enjoying lunch at a cafe with my friend, but she had to leave early because her daughter got a fever. As a result, I ended up parting ways with my friend a few hours earlier than we had originally planned. I thought about making a detour somewhere, but I just did my grocery shopping for dinner and headed straight home. I figured my elderly in-laws would feel more at ease if I was home. After finishing shopping, I opened the front door and headed for the living room. There's a hallway leading to the living room, and my in-laws' bedroom is off of it. I heard them conversing as I walked by. They usually keep their door completely shut, but that day it was slightly ajar, allowing their conversation to filter out. I wasn't initially curious about their conversation, but the moment I was about to walk past, I heard my name. Intrigued, I wanted to know what they were discussing. Leaning close to the door, I was met with a barrage of shocking words.
Sarah's out having lunch with her friend again. She did the same just recently. Despite being a full-time homemaker, she lives a carefree life. Without Mark, she wouldn't be able to maintain that lifestyle. Well, maybe Sarah just needs a break every once in a while. But I do feel it's unfair. We can't dine out because of our health, yet she goes out all the time on her own. Exactly. Why did he marry her? I wished he married the one he was dating before. Besides, Sarah has a rather unrefined side. Her cooking isn't great either. I discovered that especially my mother-in-law had a negative perception of me.
I had never heard such comments directly, and Mark had never mentioned that his parents disliked me. So this was my first time realizing that they did. Knowing they disliked me made interactions with them somewhat awkward. Of course, I continued with my usual chores and tasks, but the conversations between us started dwindling. It was hard to confide in Mark, and if I did, confronting the in-laws would likely lead to denial, making my case harder. As I pondered what to do next, things took a worse turn. My mother-in-law's cherished necklace went missing. And shockingly, she blamed it on me. She demanded a search of my room, and to prove my innocence, I complied. Though I was certain I hadn't taken it, Patricia's necklace mysteriously emerged from a drawer containing my jewelry.
See, I knew it was her. She always eyed my necklace with envy. I bet she's taken other things too.
With that, Mark and my father-in-law frantically searched my room. In the end, only the necklace was found. I was left standing in the middle of the room, feeling ostracized. From that day on, I was treated like a thief, distanced by the family. They wouldn't listen to any of my explanations. To make matters worse, my mother-in-law was spreading nasty rumors about me throughout the neighborhood.
That woman stole my necklace. Can you believe it? And she keeps denying it, even though it was found in her room.
Given the talk every time I left the house, I was met with cold stares. Life went on this way for a while, and being home became increasingly uncomfortable. Usually, I would stay home, engage in my hobby of crafting, and converse with my in-laws. However, lately, I had been spending more time outside. After preparing breakfast for the in-laws in the morning, I would head out. I'd kill time at diners or comic book stores until Mark returned from work. One day, I received a call from Mark informing me that his mother had been urgently hospitalized.
Where are you? Mom fell down some stairs at a pedestrian bridge and got injured. Please come to the nearest hospital from the house. Dad and I will be with Mom. Mark said hurriedly, before hanging up.
I happened to be close to the hospital at that moment, so it only took me about 5 minutes to get there on foot. After quickly finishing up some errands, I walked briskly to the hospital where I heard my mother-in-law had been taken. I asked a nurse which room she was in, and as I headed to the room, I had an ominous feeling. When I opened the door, everyone present turned to look at me simultaneously. Their gazes were sharp and hostile, like they were looking at a villain. I thought my bad feeling might be right. Then, my mother-in-law pointed at me and shouted,
"How dare you?"
When I asked what was going on, she exclaimed,
"Don't play dumb. You pushed me down the stairs. When I was walking over the pedestrian bridge near the house, I felt someone push me from behind. It hurt so much when I fell, but with the last of my strength, I looked up, and there you were. You vanished before others gathered, but I'm sure it was you." "No, I didn't."
I tried to explain that it wasn't me, but my husband and father-in-law interrupted.
"I never thought you'd be capable of such a thing. Just leave our home." "I agree. This is for the best. You two had issues before. It's better if you live separately." "That's right. Just leave. You're not family. And Mark, you should divorce her."
"Yeah, I'm going to," Mark said. Without being able to defend myself, it was decided that we would divorce, and I would be ousted from the family. Leaving the hospital before my husband and father-in-law, I felt lost. I never imagined things would turn out this way, and my parents live far away. It would take a lot of effort to move my belongings there. Moreover, my parents were strict, and I didn't know what they'd say if I told them I was divorcing. However, at that moment, I thought they were the only ones I could rely on. On my way home from the hospital, I called my mother. "I'm sorry. I'm gonna get a divorce and I want to come back for a while. Is that okay?" Hearing the tone of my voice, my mother sensed something was wrong. "Okay, I understand. I'll tell your father. Just pack what you can for tomorrow. We'll rent a large vehicle and come over." When I got home, I packed my belongings as my mother instructed. I couldn't take everything, so I left the furniture. I packed my clothes, accessories, and mementos in boxes. I came across a photo of me and my husband. I wasn't sure if I should keep it. I loved him and I thought we could have lived happily together if it weren't for this incident. But I knew there was no going back. I'm sure he'll contact a divorce lawyer by tomorrow, and I've decided to throw away all the pictures of my husband once and for all. The next day, my parents came over in a large truck that could carry all my stuff.
"Long time no see. You probably didn't sleep well last night. I'll drive, so you just rest in the car." And my father drove the long 6-hour journey by himself.
My father had told me to get some sleep, but tears streamed down my face in the back seat, overwhelmed by my parents' kindness. I wasn't sure if they noticed or not, but they, sitting in the front, didn't say a word to me. After about 3 hours, my parents and I made it back home safely. I know you're tired, but could you tell me a bit more about what happened? You haven't done anything wrong, right? Given the situation, there's a chance you could be arrested, so I really want you to tell me everything, my parents asked, looking for more details. I explained that I was suspected of stealing my mother-in-law's necklace and now was being accused of pushing her down the stairs.
That's a lie, right? Why would anyone make up such a story? I think someone either wanted to harass you, or they had something to hide. That's the only two options I see. Something to hide? Maybe someone who shouldn't have been there was present and Patricia got seriously injured by accident. So they're trying to blame it on Sarah to cover it up, maybe?
What my father said made sense. But I had always thought such things only happened in TV shows or movies. No official complaint was made, and I just wanted to get a peaceful divorce. However, it seemed my parents thought otherwise. Well, it made sense. If their only daughter was being framed, they'd naturally want to prove her innocence.
Maybe we should do a bit more investigation? I'll also reach out to some folks I know.
Considering my parents' advice, I decided to look deeper into the matter. Just as I was about to look into the situation in detail, divorce papers from my husband's attorney were mailed to my parents' house. I thought having the divorce papers in front of me might make me reconsider. But to my surprise, I realized my feelings for my ex-husband Mark were gone. Probably because he had never supported me. Over time and through various events, I just didn't love Mark anymore. Having finally cut ties with Mark and both his parents, I began to seriously investigate the incident. Patricia, who used to be my mother-in-law, doesn't seem to have filed a complaint, and it appears the police and hospital staff find it a bit suspicious. Given the fuss she made, everyone probably expected her to file a complaint. Digging deeper would be quite a hassle. So, I decided to seek help from my father. He used to work for the NYPD, so he has many connections within the force. He was able to arrange for me to view the security footage from the nearby cameras. Security cameras don't store footage for very long, but thankfully, the footage around the staircase where Patricia was allegedly pushed was still available. Examining the footage closely, it was clear that Patricia was indeed pushed down the stairs. However, no matter how much they zoomed in, it wasn't me. To further solidify my alibi, I checked the footage from where I was at the same time. It showed me taking care of some business. This proved my innocence. Turns out, when I got the call about Patricia's accident, I was at a different hospital. Having endured more than my fair share of harassment from Patricia and her group, I had been visiting a psychiatrist. That day, I had an appointment, and the footage showed me leaving the psychiatrist's office. This confirmed I wasn't to blame, but I wasn't gonna let it end there. To clear my name from all the humiliation I'd suffered, I chose to confront Patricia and her group head-on. I brought an attorney with me and headed to Mark's house. After consulting with an attorney, it turned out that due to the emotional distress I suffered, I might be able to claim compensation. At home, there were Mark, Patricia, and Bill, my ex-father-in-law, all staring at us with puzzled looks.
Who's that guy? Why bring someone like that here now? I said I wouldn't press charges, so you should be grateful.
In response to Patricia, the attorney presented a document.
What's this?
The document stated that I was not the cause of Patricia's injury, and that someone else had pushed her down the stairs.
I apologize for the late introduction. I am Sarah's attorney. As mentioned in this document, Sarah was somewhere else on the day you testified that she was pushed down the stairs. Of course, we've already verified the truth with security camera footage. If you'd like, I can show you the footage. And there was another person visible near the stairs besides you, Patricia.
When the attorney explained that much, Patricia quickly pulled the document towards herself.
What the heck is this? Just when I thought you'd suddenly show up, this is all in the past. I said I'd forgive you, so please don't bring it up anymore. Patricia was clearly panicking.
Both Mark and Bill seemed suspicious.
Why are you so flustered? If Mom didn't do anything wrong, you should be confident about it. That's right. We're on Patricia's side, after all.
Despite their reassuring words, Patricia's face grew paler.
Aren't you too curious about who pushed Patricia down the stairs? I do wonder. Who was it? Who would do such a thing to my dear wife? I won't forgive them. Well, hold on a sec.
Ignoring Patricia's attempt to stop me, I continued.
It was Patricia's affair partner. Her affair partner?
Patricia had been infatuated with a man for some time. That man was a bartender, and Patricia had gone into debt just to lavish money on him. However, no matter how much money she gave him, he never truly belonged to her. Frustrated, Patricia confronted him. That confrontation took place at the top of those stairs. Even though the Patricia didn't own the man, reports indicate that there was a physical relationship between them. It seems Patricia was waiting for the man to leave the bartender job, but he showed no signs of leaving and often went out with other customers. The man had always seen Patricia as a troublesome client, and in a fit of anger, he allegedly pushed her down the stairs. Realizing the gravity of his actions, the man tried to help Patricia, but she said, "It's okay. We'll say my daughter-in-law did this. You should go home." Unable to approach the police for this particular investigation, they had no choice but to hire a private investigator. Pictures capturing the two are clear, and there's no way to deny it. Upon presenting the evidence to the police, an immediate investigation was launched, and the man was arrested. During interrogation, he confessed everything that transpired between him and Patricia on the staircase.
Tell me it's a lie. Please say it isn't true. Cheating, huh? You're the worst.
Realizing there's no escaping the truth, Patricia immediately began to apologize.
I'm sorry. I was just so lonely. What do you mean, lonely? I've always been there for you. We're getting a divorce. I don't want to hear any excuses.
Upon being exposed, Patricia faced an immediate decision of divorce. Though she tried desperately to salvage her relationship with Bill, he was too enraged to listen. Mark, too, was shocked to learn of his mother's infidelity and looked at Patricia with disgust. Moreover, the amount of debt Patricia accumulated to lavish the man was several $100,000, an amount she couldn't possibly repay with her pension alone. Patricia wasn't the type to save money, so repaying the debt would likely take a significant amount of time. She begged Mark for help, but he snapped back, "Are you kidding me? Because of your lies, I divorced Sarah. I'm not giving you a single dime for the money you borrowed for your lover." In the end, Patricia faced both a divorce and being disowned by Mark. Unable to repay the money and left without a place to stay, Patricia had no choice but to sadly return to her own home. To pay off the debt as soon as possible, it seems that Patricia's elder brother, who took over the family house, has taken on the responsibility. However, she'll be isolated until she repays all the money to him. Patricia can't just go outside as she pleases, and she doesn't have any money to spend freely. When Patricia receives her pension, it's all ordered to be given to her brother. I bet she regrets mingling with that bar and harassing me. I haven't seen Patricia since then, but apparently, the once youthful-looking Patricia has aged considerably. And for me, having been mentally tormented by those three on a daily basis, I managed to get a small amount in damages. From a certain point, whenever I spoke to those three, I always made sure to have a voice recorder on, so I had more than enough evidence when claiming for damages. Later on, I received numerous messages and voicemails from Mark expressing his wish to reconcile. But I'm not gonna get back with Mark. Even though he had promised to always be on my side when we moved in together, just thinking of being with Mark, who couldn't even keep that single promise, gives me the creeps. I'm sure if we were together in the future, I'll find more unpleasant things about him, and in the end, I'd be the one getting hurt. It seems Mark and Bill are living together, but with Patricia and I gone, their house is said to be filled with a cold atmosphere. Bill isn't very strong health-wise, so he needs regular hospital visits. Mark juggles his job and housework while also driving Bill to and from the hospital. It must be quite tough for him. I get diary-like messages from him every day about his daily struggles, but I usually send them straight to the trash without reading all of them. Since divorcing Mark, I've been enjoying my single life. I've successfully found a new job, and I became a beauty advisor, something I've always wanted to be. Up until now, I was always occupied with looking after Mark and my in-laws, so my own beauty regimen was always on the back burner. During a time when I was away from my in-laws, I once visited a department store's cosmetics section. There, I received advice on how to enhance my beauty and was told how to be more confident. That was the first time in my life I felt so confident, and I believe the beauty advisor at that time played a huge role in making me who I am today. That's why I decided to pursue a career as a beauty advisor, hoping to inspire others the way I was inspired. Although the job involves many behind-the-scenes tasks and challenges, I find it fulfilling. Thankfully, since becoming a beauty advisor, I've received many compliments on my appearance. I've started to attract attention from men. A while back, a man approached me at a cafe, and we've been on several dates since. Just the other day, after confessing his feelings, we officially started dating. He knows I'm divorced, and even after knowing my past, he expressed his feelings for me. Unlike Mark, he's always supportive, and he's the first one to lend a hand when I'm in need. It's been 3 years since my divorce from Mark, and I'll soon turn 40. Lately, I've been pondering if remarrying wouldn't be such a bad idea. But first and foremost, I want to be someone I'm proud of and want to continue improving myself. I genuinely wish that women with feelings like mine would be more confident and speak up without fear.